If you want to learn more about effective management, head over to mattsingers.com and sign up for my free management training.
Welcome to the Mad Singers Management Podcast from madsingers.com, where entrepreneurs and business managers learn and share. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a review.
Hello, and welcome back to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Todd Kuckkahn. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I am super excited to have a great conversation with you today because we have a little bit similar backgrounds, and like myself, you've done lots of cool things in the corporate world and with nonprofits and so on. But why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and how you ended up where you are?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, a couple months ago, I jumped full-time into entrepreneurship, running my own business. But prior to that, I spent a lot of time in the nonprofit world. I worked for different universities. I've worked for nonprofits, worked for a business council, a chamber of commerce. So a lot of the work I've done has been running, managing, supporting, helping, aiding businesses, improve themselves. I've done a lot of, raising money in the nonprofit world. Also, early on in my life, I did a lot of coaching in basketball. I did some high school teaching. And I do some college teaching now. So I do a bunch of stuff. I don't know if I do any of it well or not, but I do a bunch of different things.
I've always found teachers make great managers. I don't know if there's a similarity to what they do, but yeah.
Well, I think there is. I think you've got, you got students running around your classroom, just like you have employees running around your business. And sometimes it's a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. What's been the most exciting thing you've done so far, Todd?
Well, I think just making the decision to jump out on my own full-time into entrepreneurship and starting my own business. That was a pretty big moment. I figured out about a year ago, actually, in early 2021, that my work schedule and my passion were conflicting in terms of time. That I really enjoy the leadership, corporate culture, corporate communication, that space, and was doing a lot of presenting and speaking and coaching and training, but I had to take vacation time to do that. So that probably was one of the bigger decisions I've had to make recently is make that jump into it. And as you know, as an entrepreneur yourself, there are high moments, where you get that client or you make that difference. And then there are the day-to-day struggles of, am I going to be able to feed myself tomorrow or next month or next year? So it's a roller coaster, but it's an exciting roller coaster.
100%. And yeah, I've luckily many years since I jumped into it, but yeah, it was interesting. I was lucky enough to actually start sort of coaching on the side while I was working corporately. So I had a bit of a safety net when I first let go, but yeah, it was definitely interesting.
And that's similar to me too. I started in the leadership area about 4.5 years ago and did it kind of on a part-time basis, pick up a few things here and there while I was working full-time. So yeah, that safety net is nice. And I've got 4 daughters. I know the listeners can't see my hair, but if you could see my hair, you could tell I have 4 daughters. It's kind of gray and thinning, but now they're all, 3 of them have jobs. One of them is graduating from college. So I just felt it was a good time, but there's, you never know when that right time is. It could be at 22. It could be at 63 like it was for me.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's awesome. Good to hear. So you mentioned a little bit about sort of corporate leadership and working with big organizations and so on. One of the things that I love is really the ability to take some of these big systems and frameworks and really help small entrepreneurs understand how they work and the value, right? Because it can sometimes be hard to compare, and sometimes it's easy to say, oh, these big organizations can afford to do anything, right? But just from a leadership training standpoint, like what are some of the key lessons that you think that entrepreneurs can really learn from the corporate world?
I think, first of all, I think you're absolutely right, Mads, that yeah, it doesn't matter whether you're 10,000 or 10. That the principles are still the same. And, a big company can maybe buy a $20,000 product off the shelf to try to help their business, but there are some simple skills that the employer can do if they have a small business as well. I think that the thing that's really helped me and is helping me is making sure I stay focused on my purpose, my why. And that's kind of the bigger piece of it all. If you're not strong on why you're doing it, what's the reason behind it? And I'm kind of on a mission. I want to revolutionize corporate leadership and culture, and that's a huge thing, I know. But that's my mission. That's my purpose, and that's what I'm trying to do by helping all these different businesses with their leadership ability, with their communication, building trust, and creating constructive conflict. So I don't know if that answered your question. Maybe I got a little sidetracked there, but that passion, I think, is really an important piece of it.
Tell us a little bit more about constructive conflict.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, every workplace has drama, right? Every family has drama. Every organization has drama. We know that's out there, but conflict is really a good thing if you and your business know how to handle it. And that's where I think you have to start on kind of a base level of what do you as individuals value, what do you as a company value, and then continue to build on that, and then develop your communication skills so that there's adequate communication going on between the owners, the president, the staff, whoever, whether again 2 people or 200 people. Communication is so critical to that. Once you develop the communication and people see that you're an honorable person, that you live up to your values, then the trust develops. And from the trust, by trusting each other, again, it's a lot like a relationship, right? By trusting each other, when those topics come up that create conflict, you can have constructive conversation around that conflict because the trust is there. People will realize they're not always going to get their way, but they're at least going to have a chance to give input into the process, whatever it is. So conflict, I think, is healthy as long as you make it constructive, but that only comes from, again, building that communication, building that trust amongst the people you work with.
Yeah, I love you mentioning communication, because for me, that's definitely number one when it comes to any kind of training. And when I do any training, communication is always the first focus, right? Because, and not just at the workplace, honestly, like I've coached lots of corporate people, and the one thing that I experienced is that when experienced managers that have performed well in the past start struggling in a corporate environment, in 95% of the case, it's problems at home.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
often stuff that communication can solve, or could have solved, or maybe could have solved if it had happened earlier in the process, right? But
things from home come into the workplace, and things from the workplace come into home. And there's some simple kind of things you can do, man, to help that communication. I'm working with a company right now. It's about 200 employees. We created a culture team, but one of the things that we've told the culture team is told the executive leadership team is, get out in the plant. It's a manufacturing facility. Get out in the plant and just talk to people. You don't have to have any great strategy, or just get out and talk to people, say hi, let them see your face, let them know that you care. Sit down at a lunch table with people you maybe not know as an executive, get to know them. Some simple things like that. There's another company I heard of that it's about 4,000 employees, and the CEO writes a handwritten birthday card every birthday for all 4,000 employees. Now that's got to take a little bit of time, right? So if you're a small staff of, again, 10, 20, 50, 100, that's even a little bit easier to do. And it means so much. Think about when you get your mail, right? The first thing you look at when you get your mail, if there's a handwritten address on it. I'm not going to open the one with the cellophane wrapper and the pre-printed address. If someone writes me a handwritten note, it means so much. And those little things can build up into those bigger things that lead to that eventual trust and constructive conflict.
Definitely. Yeah, I love it. And I think 100% agree, right? And communication, it's one of the things that baffles me the most with our general education system. Like even people that come out of, university with a communications degree or whatever they call it, honestly hardly understand very much about communication, which is a shame, right?
Well, I think it becomes too academic then. Not that academics are bad, but it becomes too structured communication, and you really have to practice communication. I mean, we do it from the moment we're born, right? We start crying when the doctor slaps our butt, but it's something we need to continually work on and bring out in other people. And I think that's part of one of the things I work a lot on is the DISC assessment. It's a behavioral personality assessment, and tells people what their communication styles are, and then how can they work better with other communication styles. Because I'm an I personality style, I'm an influencer, I'm more outgoing, I'm people oriented, and other people are not that way. And that doesn't make them, better or worse than me. They're just a different style. And part of my responsibility is to meet them where they are as a communicator and help bring them out. You know, if it's in a staff meeting and somebody's kind of sitting there quietly, you know, figure out a way to bring in Susie or Johnny into that conversation to help and build that communication amongst the team.
Totally. And that is my ultimate framework as well. That is, I spend hours teaching clients about DISC with everything I do, because for me, it's so simple, yet so complex. It's the easiest tool I've ever seen in learning and understanding how to communicate more effective to individuals that you've never met before, or even individuals you've known for years, right? Because most of the time, people don't understand people who are different from who they are. Right?
I had a friend tell me once he took the DISC assessment and he read it and he said to me, it wasn't me. It's just like it didn't, you know, it didn't seem like me at all. And he said, then I had my wife read it, and his wife said, oh, Gordon, this is you exactly. This is you 100%. So he didn't have the self-awareness to really understand. But you're right. It's a 15-minute tool, basically, assessment that you take, and it gives you a report that tells you so much. And you need to learn about yourself if you're going to be able to help others and work with others. And that's the first step. The second step is, again, where you use that tool with your whole staff and figure out ways to communicate. I'll go in the office when I used to be in the office on a Monday morning, and I'll talk about the Green Bay Packer football team and my Wisconsin Badgers college team, and I'll just be blah, blah, blah. And this person, I go in their office and she's like laser focused on her computer. So I have two choices, right? I can come out of her office and say, oh my God, leave her alone. She's a BIT, you know what, today, and what a crab and how cranky she is. Or I can walk out of her office and say, hey guys, let's leave her alone. She's working on an important report. Let's respect her work style and let's let her get that done and leave her alone. Make sure we answer the phone or take care of the front door. And, you know, it's a simple example, but that's kind of what you're getting at, Mads, with the DISC assessment, how it can work.
Yeah, actually, what I teach my clients not to use the assessment, but just to read people's body language and behavior, because the challenges with tests of any kind of behavioral test is, number one, how well people actually know themselves. So the biggest challenge is that most people, as your friend, many people don't actually know themselves super well. So even when they take the test, they often answer what they want to be, not necessarily who they are. And the other piece is, like a lot of companies do it at a job interview situation, and people will always tell you what they think you want to hear, no matter what you tell them in a job interview situation specifically, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the reason why I always teach people to just learn to read basic body language and get the DISC parameters for that, because that, for me, that's where DISC stand out compared to any other test. Because I mean, DISC and Myers-Briggs in principle are very similar, right? But Myers-Briggs and all the other ones, they don't have the simple ability to identify people's behavior just by like just talking to the person for a few minutes, right?
And isn't it interesting how little content matters in a conversation, that your nonverbal communication, what you're doing, and the tone in which you say something, those things are so critical. I mean, your content certainly is important, but like you say, you study their non, like you and I are kind of studying each other now and trying to figure each other out a little bit. But it's so important to see the whole part of communication, not just the words that are being spoken.
Again, that depends so much on the person, right? So, I mean, there's people who can literally sit and stare into a wall while having a conversation with you because they primarily listen to the words. Yeah. And there's people, like, if you're not staring them into the eyes, they're like, why are you not listening to me, and getting frustrated with you, right? So again, that's the whole thing about, different people and so on.
Yeah.
Excellent. So let's jump into culture a little bit, because that's something that many smaller businesses, at least, often struggle to get their head around, how to actually build a good culture and how to work with what they have and so on. So what's your take on culture in general?
Yeah, so I've worked in mostly small offices. The last one was 6, I think, that we had at the Business Council. Most of the places I've worked in have been fairly small, or the departments I've been have been very small. And the mantra that I've always, and I'm thinking to myself as I'm talking here, but kind of a 3-prong mantra that we talked about in our small office to really help with the culture. One is dream big. I think we always need to dream big. we're recording this on Martin Luther King's birthday, which is a major holiday in the United States. And he had a speech called "I Have a Dream." Not "I have a plan," but "I have a dream." So I think dreaming big is one of the first things you need to do. I think you have the second thing is know how to have fun. I think you have to have fun in the workplace. Now, if your listeners haven't watched it, it's called FISH, FISH philosophy. And it came out of a meat market or a fish market in Seattle. And they've got, they're throwing fish around. They've got ice. It's kind of rainy in Seattle sometimes. And it's not a pleasant place, but they turned it into something that was fun, right? And I think you have to know how to have fun. Obviously, safety is important too, depending upon your workplace, but you have to know how to have fun. And then the third one is get stuff, different word, get stuff done, right? Get your work done and roll up your sleeves and pull up your sleeves for each other. Again, in the office I was just in the Chamber of Commerce, we'd have a major event with 400 people that would come in for dinner, and there'd be a handful of us on staff working the event. Well, at that event, we all threw our titles out the window and we listened to our event planner. And she was the boss for that particular time, right? And if she said jump, we said how high. It didn't matter who you were, and you didn't ask questions. So you have to get stuff done, but to help get stuff done, I think you have to dream big, and I think you have to know how to have fun. So those are kind of three simple elements of culture. And then it really boils down to just how you treat people, how you treat each other. And I go by the platinum rule, which is treat others as they would want to be treated. The golden rule is do unto others as you do unto yourself. Well, the platinum rule is do unto others as they would want done to them. So that gets back to the styles and understanding other people and their styles and really meeting them where they are and filling in their needs. So those are a few little things as it relates to culture.
Yep, definitely. I agree. And yeah, it totally goes back to DISC as well, right? Because again, it's easy when people say treat others like you want to be treated. Particularly in terms of communication style, sometimes people want you to be super direct, but that's not necessarily the right way to communicate to others around them, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's super interesting. What about personal development? What's your sort of magic trick to get an organization on sort of the personal development train and making sure that people are growing as individuals?
One of the tools I've used that's been pretty effective is a mastermind around some content or a book. My initial training in leadership development came through John Maxwell. Also read a lot of Simon Sinek's books, a lot of Patrick Lencioni's books, and I think reading is a first step in your personal development just for yourself. And in your business, there's a lot of businesses I know, and most businesses I work with, where we'll read some content and then use that content to relate it back to something that's going on in the workplace. So I've used John Maxwell's got a book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So maybe once a week, you read each one of those laws, and you have maybe a 30-minute staff meeting and talk about, okay, what did that say? But not like an academic test, but then relate how is what I read in there relate to what's going on in the workplace, and how can we help our communication build that trust and start working on that conflict. Lencioni's got a great book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. That's another one where you can take a 15 question, I think it is, assessment, and then work through some of that. And Lencioni talks a lot about trust and constructive conflict. So I really think that's a simple way. If you don't know where to go, obviously you can reach out to one of us, but if you don't know what way to go yourself, is ask somebody what's a good book to read, and make it a personal development book, and then out of there have some conversations with your staff about it. And it's amazing what will open up again.
Definitely. What's been your personal hack to success generally in the world of business in general?
It's been developing habits and challenges are the two things. So I've got a routine pretty much every morning. Well, every morning I go through, there's a series of things that I do, and it's almost robotic, which I guess is a good thing, because then it's a habit. It's not just a New Year's resolution that I forget about, but it's a habit. And I try to add something new every time. And what that means is I have to take away from something else that I'm doing. And typically I take away my time on social media, and there is value to social media, but there's also some time that I spend wasting on there. So I'll take 10 minutes of social media time and plug it into something. Just from a fitness standpoint, I'm starting to do sit-ups and push-ups every morning. Whatever day it is, that number of sit-ups and push-ups I do. So I did 17 today, and I can feel it. But creating those habits really, I think is a big thing. The other thing that I like as well is challenges. So I've got a number of different people that I connect with. I've got 3 different groups that I connect with, and we have different accountability challenges. For me, I have trouble sometimes doing things on my own, sticking to things, being accountable to myself. So if I got somebody else that I've got to do it for, it elevates me a little bit. Matter of fact, we get together every Wednesday afternoon. I've got something I've got to get out today. So without that, I probably wouldn't think about doing it. So creating those habits, and then creating challenges, and you can do some fun things in the workplace with that too. But those are probably 2 things from the personal development standpoint that have really helped me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, I look at it in a similar fashion. I mean, luckily many years ago, I read Atomic Habits, and that was an amazing book, and just on establishing habits the way you're saying it, right? Like really just keep building on and keep steady habits throughout basically your life, right? Like build them up and keep doing the things that, like, if you're so used to doing them, they don't feel hard anymore. That's a super hack for sure.
Yes, Simon Sinek has a great video out. It's about 6-7 minutes, and I don't know the exact. I can never remember the name of it, but if you look up Simon Sinek, Sinek, and just Google or search leadership, love, exercise, and he talks about how exercise and love and leadership are all the same, right? If you exercise 9 hours in one day, you're just going to get really stiff. But if you exercise 30 minutes a day over a course of time, you'll get in shape. Same thing with love. You don't all of a sudden fall in love with somebody. It's a process, as is once if you decide to take on a partner, there's a process. You have to continue that relationship. Same thing with leadership. You can't go to a 2 or 3 day seminar and the switch is flipped and all of a sudden it's magic. It's something you continually work on and you're persistent at. And that's why, the book thing is not any complicated, expensive thing to do, but it's something that if you do it repetitively, it can really help you and it can help your business.
Definitely. That's definitely been my biggest hack in life. Luckily, when I was 18, I got a great manager, and I basically started reading a book a week for at least 10 years, right? And the thing is, many of the things, like I've read stuff that I wouldn't use for 10 years, but the thing is, when you have a lot of stuff in your head and you eventually get to use it, what happened for me at least was that even when I made a mistake, I realized I'd made a mistake, because I understood, like, oh, this conversation wasn't supposed to go this way. And I actually realized that I'd made a mistake, and I had the theory from the books of why it went wrong. So that was super, super helpful in general, right? But yeah, it's probably the most powerful habit as a human being you can learn, I think, personally.
So like you're talking about, man, self-awareness is so critical. Is we're going to fail, we're going to make mistakes. So having that self-awareness to understand it and understand why, and more importantly, how am I going to change what I do in the future to make sure that mistake doesn't happen again. So, but reading, that's amazing. Reading a book a week, holy cow, that's you're way ahead of me. But I've read more books in the last 4.5 years than I did my entire life by multiples. I mean, even in college. So, but it's helped me, and I need to do a better job of taking what I read and implementing it. Of course, we all do, but it's so valuable, and it's simple. It's simple to do, right? Not easy always, but it's simple.
So I had a period where I was listening to a ton of podcasts and so on, and honestly, I've had to cut most of them out just because I'm a very addictive personality. So when I first start with episode 1, I can't stop until I listen to them all. And at one point, I was trying to listen to 12 podcasts every week, and I was like, that's a lot. So I had to kind of cut down on podcasts quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, again, development, it's about building the habit and just make it consistent, right? Because if you do, like most people sprint into it, they read like a lot or they do a lot, and then they just fall flat, and then you don't get that much value out of it. So
that's why we talked about before, creating those habits. So you do it regularly, you do it consistently, and you have to think about what are you feeding yourself when you're on social media or watching television. Not that you shouldn't, but what are you feeding yourself, and what could you be feeding yourself? In the United States, over the weekend, there were 6 NFL playoff games. You could have watched, 24 hours of football. Well, couldn't you have taken like 1 hour maybe and done a little reading or something? It's not a huge sacrifice to do it. Just time management, how you use your time and how you create those habits.
Yeah, I mean, I have a TV in this apartment, but I don't know if it works. So that's that's how to do it. That's how to do it. So, Todd, in terms of small business owners, what do you reckon is generally the biggest sort of thing that you see most small business owners management-wise do wrong, that you sort of, or not wrong, but where they can do better or where they can improve based on your observation so far?
I think the relationship part is so important. I think sometimes people get so involved in their business, they forget about what goes around their business. I think business as a particularly small business owner, you need to stay connected. There's so much value out there in the world. And that's why when I ran the business council, we had 500 businesses who were members, and we had different events and activities to try to get those folks to get engaged and stay with each other and pick each other's brains. If you go to a networking event as a business person, make sure you're going there to give and not necessarily to get. If you go there to get, you're probably not going to be as successful. But if you're willing to give something to another business owner, you'll probably get it back tenfold. So I think you need to really still be out there and find those people, find your inner circle of people that can help you. Create a little group that maybe you get together with once a week for 30, 45 minutes and just talk about what are your challenges. Be willing to share your fails, but you have to do that with other people. I think that's one of the things that, the remote work, which I think there's a lot of value to it. Sometimes you lose the bonding or whatever you want to call it aspect of it. I mean, you can do some through Zoom and other media, but I think you really need to get and be with people and in front of people. So those relationships, sometimes you get so ingrained in your business, you forget about the people around it. And I think that's really critical.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've been location independent for probably 7, 8 years or something like that by now. And I spend majority of my time that I spend with people, I spend networking, because I think wherever you go in the world, you can always find great people. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that you can learn something from everyone, right? Yeah. I think a lot of the time people focus too much. They're like, oh, can I get some benefit from knowing you? And then it's like, okay, let's move on, right? But reality is you can build many, many solid relationships with people anywhere you go in the world. And I mean, I use simple tools like LinkedIn or whatever, and literally just hit up some people with some interesting titles or some, I don't know, working with some cool companies or whatever. And I just say like, hey, I'm in town, do you want to grab a coffee or something? And it doesn't need to be more complex than that. And here's the thing, no one does it. So like a lot of the time people say yes, because I mean, if there was 20 people doing it every day, like people wouldn't have the time, but reality is no one does it. Right. So generally you can get to talk to some really amazing people. And I've met people that have changed my life multiple times just that way. Right. So.
Well, interestingly, I'm starting to write a book. So I've been doing some interviews of folks and interviewed one guy that I've known for probably 15 years. And I did a 30-minute interview, and I learned more about him in that 30 minutes than I had the previous 17 years. And it's because we had a conversation. Then we ended up going to breakfast. We had another hour conversation, learned some more about each other. Now we're going to get together again and pick each other's brains on leadership and some different tools he uses and tools that I use. And I just kind of randomly out on LinkedIn. I knew him. I said, hey, let's get together for a book interview, not even knowing if he would. And he did it. I'm so glad we got connected. So that's exactly what you're talking about and people love to talk. People love to network. So I think you're right. It's kind of a forgotten skill. And we need to do more of it.
Definitely. Well, Todd, thank you very, very much for joining me today. That was awesome having you on board. If people are eager to get to know more about you or get hold of you, what's the best way to do so?
Sure. I have a website, and it's my first name and last name. So it's ToddKuckkahn toddkuckkahn.com. Also, I'm on social media. I do a lot of posting on social media, so I see some value there. But I'm on social media a lot as well, so people can find me there as well. This has been great, Mads. I appreciate it. It's been a great conversation.
Epic. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Todd. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
And to the audience, we'll be back again next week. Thank you for hanging on all the way to the end.
Thank you for listening to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Please leave a review. It means the world to us. You can also learn more about management at madsingers.com.